Good morning, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. Um, I want to start by thanking the people at Startup Brazil for giving me this opportunity to talk about business in the age of AI. To begin the talk, I want to address three topics that frequently arise when talking about AI and related to business. The first is the idea that AI will eliminate human jobs. This is in fact unlikely because human skills and AI strengths are complementary. AI can process data fast, accurately, and very, very patiently. Humans, on the other hand, are creative, they manage emotion well, and they understand ambiguity, which are challenges for AI machines. So in reality, with these complementary skills, AI is likely to change what humans do, but is in fact likely to make the jobs more interesting and more rewarding. Okay? A second area is the idea that AI is easy. AI is in fact not easy. People frequently ask me, what do I consider to be the skills necessary for somebody to be a good data scientist? My answer is somebody with a good understanding of calculus, linear algebra, probability and statistics, somebody who's a good computer programmer, understands big data, and communicates exceptionally well. Finding such a person is obviously somewhat of a challenge, but it's worth the effort. AI changes what is possible for us to do, right? Sorry. And when AI is viewed with IoT, and the two concepts are really inseparable, AI changes what we can achieve. IoT can supply sufficient data for us to understand incredibly complex problems. And then once that information has been supplied by the IoT sensors, AI makes that big data useful so that we can actually control those processes. Finally, the third thing that I want to address is that AI is inherently biased. AI is, in fact, extremely objective. The challenge is when creating an AI model, we need to train it very, very carefully and pay attention to the training sets that we're using to inform that model. In practice, if we train anything badly, a human or a artificial intelligence machine, the outcome is probably not going to be good. So let me dive into a little bit more detail of how AI is changing business. There are really three things that AI is doing. The first is the concept of personalization. With AI, we can match products or services to individuals in a very personal and individual way. In addition, AI is moving to concepts like sentiment analysis, where we can tailor the pitch to the individual or the group to whom the product or services are targeted. AI also helps with risk reduction. The real promise of AI is that with sufficient data and a sufficiently precise question, we can predict what is going to happen in the near-term future. If you can predict what is likely to happen in the near term, then there is substantial risk reduction, which is possible. For example, managing inventory or managing price variation. Additionally, the ideas of anomaly detection in AI allow prediction of failures and faults, and therefore the concept of preventative maintenance, which increases overall productivity. And then finally, the idea that when combined with Internet of Things, IoT, handling of very, very large systems that we previously could not hope to control becomes possible. Page down. I want to talk about how AI is affecting particular industries. So there are certain industries where the use of AI has become standard. We can think of these as mature. Online retail, insurance, banking, recruitment, hospitality, and travel have all been adopting AI for about the last 5 to 10 years. In the interest of time, I'm just going to talk about one of these. In the online retail space, if you visit a online marketplace, something like a Flipkart or an Amazon, You'll notice after a couple of visits that the products that are offered to you suddenly begin to have a very close alignment to your actual interests. This is on the basis of things like recommender systems, which really match buying patterns of individuals who are buying similar products and therefore can give you a good idea of other products that you might be interested in. But AI goes further than that. With the concepts of sentiment analysis, we can tailor pitches. So, for example, if you're running an online car sales site, for some individuals, offering a distinctive pastel blue image of the vehicle may help the sale, whereas with other individuals, offering a sleek and powerful silver image of the same vehicle may be more successful in getting to the sale. We move on. There are certain industries, transport, particularly autonomous vehicles, energy, particularly renewable energy, gaming, manufacture, agriculture, and cybersecurity, where the adoption of AI is evolving fast, offering both opportunities and challenges. Again, I'd like to just talk about one of them, energy, which is the business that Portugal is in, particularly providing services to the solar energy industry. Solar energy is changing considerably. In about 5 years ago, a 10 megawatt plant with about 50,000 solar panels was a large solar plant. Currently, in 2020, a 200 megawatt solar plant with about 1 million panels is fairly typical. When you have 1 million panels, it becomes impossible to have an individual visually inspect panels one by one, or even look at graphs of performance. If you want to detect underperforming panels or where there are actual problems, you need some guidance, and AI provides that. Equivalently, with AI, with solar energy becoming a significant provider of the energy in the world, solar energy prices have dropped substantially. This is resulting in a narrowing of margins and a necessity to keep the basically performance of the plants at their peak efficiency. Running a plant at 80 to 85% efficiency was possible 5 years ago, and was possible still to make a profit. In 2020, you need to be running a plant at 90 to 95% efficiency in order to break even. So solar energy is not economical without the type of guidance that AI can give to identify where potential failures might occur and prevent those failures from actually occurring. The last area related to solar energy is the idea of grid stability. The US Energy Information Agency is giving a prediction that over 50% of the world's energy will be renewable by 2050. This is probably an underestimate. The AIA is a very conservative organization in its projections. But if we are to add substantial renewable energy into a national grid, we need to maintain stability. And that means providing accurate forecasts of the energy that is likely to be produced in the near future, the next day, 2 days, 3 days. When you combine those forecasts, which can only be produced by AI systems, then those forecasts combined with storage systems like batteries and pumped hydro enable the idea of 100% renewable energy grid to become achievable. There are opportunities in other areas as well, professional fields like law, healthcare, education, emerging fields like biosciences, and even the crossover fields like creative arts, media, and marketing. Again, in the interest of time, just looking at one of the area, law. Corporate law is very much a standard process. There are documents like NDAs, terms and conditions, and agreements between companies that are largely boilerplate. AI is very good at extracting the key points from something like a letter of intent or an MOU and creating a boilerplate document. This doesn't mean that lawyers are going to become obsolete. In fact, lawyers add tremendous value to an engagement between companies in coming up with innovative and mutually fair ways of dealing with the particular challenges in a particular relationship. But by combining that law with AI, we can offload the non-productive tasks of just creating the document to an AI system, while we pay the high-priced lawyers to really add value to the discussion by solving those few unique problems which are special to the relationship in question. In general, that should enable more people to use lawyers, which would be a benefit in creating healthy relationships between companies. Okay? To end this talk, I want to just quickly recognize the fact that this is a startup bridge to Canada and talk a little bit about the Canadian market in the last two slides. The first thing to realize is Canada has had a substantial investment in AI. In fact, two of the world's key lead institutions, University of Montreal with Yoshua Bengio's group and the University of Toronto with Geoffrey Hinton's group, are leading academic sources of the ideas behind AI. Canada probably has the highest concentration of AI specialists to population, so highest per capita ratio, and therefore makes it a great place to do business, especially when AI is part of your business plan. One of the challenges is that the Canadian market is incredibly concentrated. Banking, insurance, energy, agriculture, high tech, and natural resources make up a very, very large proportion of the overall Canadian marketplace. Banking and insurance, Canadian companies are world leaders, and they definitely intend to remain so in the age of AI with substantial investments. In the emerging areas like energy, agriculture, and high tech that we've touched on, lots of activity, lots of potential investment there too. And even in the more traditional areas like natural resources, where the adoption of AI is in its infancy, there are opportunities there too. Of course, if you're an ambitious investor, the fact that the Canadian market is very concentrated means that there are a lot of greenfield areas for your great ideas. Sorry. Let me end by addressing a couple of specific challenges in Canada. The first is the idea of federalism. There are major regional differences in the markets. For example, if you're doing business in Quebec, the dominant language is French, and the law that you're going to be working with, the commercial law, is the Quebec Civil Code. If you do business in nearby Ontario, the dominant language is English, and the law is a much more familiar law to members of Commonwealth countries in that it has the common British influence. In BC, the business attitude is much closer to the markets in the west coast of the US, so Seattle and Silicon Valley, but with a distinctly Canadian favor. If you are planning on doing business in Canada, then having an understanding of your regional market is important. One of the benefits in Canada is the easy access to the huge US market. But this does introduce challenges in the sense that your competitors have an economy of scale and access to large and innovative US government funding programs, which can be challenging. Again, as a Canadian business, you need to have a US strategy. Third point is risk tolerance. Canadians are generally fairly cautious. There is great support for startups and good funding to get startups up and running. But growth capital can be extremely challenging. So having a strategy and an approach to acquiring growth funding is important to your longer term success. There's also some conservatism in new idea adoption. Persistence becomes important in dealing with this area. And then finally, to wrap up, I just wanted to address customer expectations. In Canada, we have some of the world's strongest privacy legislation. If your business involves the collection or use of personal information, then you certainly need to seek expert advice and pay attention to those restrictions. In Canada, we pride ourselves on egalitarianism. So if we have a product, then understanding how this might affect groups differently is also something that needs to pay attention. That said, Canada is a wonderful place to do business. And I hope for everybody listening who's considering opening a business in Canada, your journey to do business here will be as successful as enjoyable as Portugal's engagement in doing business in India. Thank you for your time.